some problems with the coop roof needed some attention today. I think the solution here is just to get this area pushed up. It looks like it's still sound, but it's dipping in the middle. I think I probably need another beam across so I can really get that so that the runoff is to the outside rather than draining into the center and causing a lot of damp inside the coop. So I'm anxious to get seeds going. It's only the 1st of March and I've got quite a few seeds to sow in March, but I think there's just a few that I can get kicked off. If they succeed, then that's great. If they don't, I'll keep an eye on them and perhaps do another sowing. It's all about taking risks in this climate, and I think I'm going to crack on and do that. Now I'm running out of space for seedlings, so my next step is to get these seedlings down below. They sit on top of the beds, and then I can use the bench for the next tranche of sowings. So with no further ado, I'm going to get myself sorted out. So that's got my bench set up for the next tranche of seedlings. The lower beds, which have got nothing in at the moment, I take large seed trays down onto that soil, and then I can put all the existing seedlings down at that low level, and that leaves me a free bench for the next stage. Now I've got a lot of seed trays here ready, and some of those I'll be using in due course for pricking on seedlings, and some of them for this next session of sowing. I did a summary in a previous video of what I'm going to sow during the March period, and I've broken that into 2 sections. Those that I think can tolerate an earlier start, and those that will be more comfortable starting a little later in March. So a second tranche of broad beans. This variety by Real Seeds is called Leeds Hang Down. So I'm going to get those underway. My existing broad bean sowings are just about that high now, and so this will be a second session. I'm going to grow just a couple of these aubergines Black Beauty from Premier Seeds, 800 seeds in here, and I'm just going to sow a couple, but I'm pretty sure I'll get a germination with that many seeds. Long Island Brussels sprout. I can't deal with hundreds of Brussels sprouts, so I'm probably going to sow about 12 at this stage, and they will hopefully get going. Giant winter leek, so these are leeks that I'm pinning my hopes on that will go through into the really cold months. So I'm going to get just a few of those started, and again I'll probably do another sowing of those a little later on. In terms of tomatoes, and this is just a little bit early for tomatoes here, but moneymaker, I'm going to grow, and I'm going to get a few of those started, see if I can get underway. The early turnip, Milan White, a 40-day turnip. I'm going to do a first test sowing of those. I'm going to get some Swedes in, which in theory you can sow outdoors from March, but you can get a bit of a steal on those. Celeriac, I'm learning more and more that celeriac can be a difficult seed to germinate and plant to grow. I was tremendously successful last year, but that's shot a warning, and I think I'm going to have to do a few sowings of these. So I'm going to do just a few more of these and see if they can get underway. And to that end, I'm also going to do the later celeriac prins, which it suggests you don't actually start sowing until a little later on, probably into April. And then on the flowers, I'm going to do 2 varieties of Cosmos. I'm going to do those in probably a couple of sessions, and the calendula needles and pins. So that's today's sewings. I'm going to get underway with those and see how far I get. A shed or a greenhouse or a polytunnel brings lots of advantages. Of course, it brings that opportunity to sew earlier, but it also gives you a chance to spread out. And this is the setup I like to have, which helps me do everything a little bit quicker. A whole bag of compost into one of these trays, some cells, sewing cells laid out flat covering another tray, and I can then just swap out and fill that again each time I fill them. And of course, the benefit of doing this is that filling those trays now becomes such an easy task just by dumping the compost, which is right next to me, onto the trays and filling them out. And anything that spills over, just not a problem, because you can stick it to the sides and then just chip it back in here when you're ready. And I like to just push down into these cells so that I know that I haven't got air pockets that are too significant and would cause the roots of the seedlings to dry out. And with the temperature getting to 24-25 degrees in the sun in the polytunnel at this time of year, I just need to make sure that I keep on top of watering from here on in, and I'll give these a watering before I start sewing, and that way I know that everything's getting a good start. And there we are. I move those out. I can get all the compost together and pour it back into the compost bin and start again. These long thin seed trays are perfect for me, mainly because they go the full depth of the bench and make it really easy to use the space effectively. So give some consideration when you're picking your trays to what sort of shape space you have, and that just makes life easier for you. So you might be thinking, well, what size trays do I use? Why would I use a small tray like this versus a sewing quarter tray like this one, or indeed a long tray that accommodates a lot more seedlings? Well, there's a few factors that I take into consideration, and again, this isn't necessarily the correct way. Of course, this one I'm selecting because of how it covers my bench. But the biggest consideration you have with these is how often you have to water, and these very small cells will dry up very quickly versus these bigger pots almost that will tolerate not being watered for a few more days. So you do need to consider the frequency at which you can visit your seedlings and water them, and make sure that they don't dry out. Of course, the other consideration you have for what trays you use is just how many seeds you want to sow, and where I only want a small number, I'm just going to use the smaller trays. Well, I'm not going to bore you with all the sewing. I'll probably put that in a time lapse for you and get on with those seeds that I showed you earlier. So there we are, that's the seeds for early March sown. These propagator covers, they're not quite as flexible as the larger ones, and we just have to keep an eye where things are sprouting up that we don't cramp their style by the edges of the propagator lids. But they're going to enable it to get that extra bit of warmth, and that's us done for today. It's raining hard today, so it's just going to be some construction jobs, but we've got to get those done. This is the sort of weather you can do them in if you're inclined. The main job I want to get done today, shouldn't take me too long and hopefully won't be affected by the weather too much, is to get some tin across the ridge of the coop. I've corrected the problem inside, but I just want that extra amount of waterproofing so that everything stays dry inside, and I think I can get that done and not get too wet. So in here I've put this extra beam which keeps the felt ridge raised where it was dipping previously, but I can still see some water dripping in here, so that tin is going to make a big difference and keep the place really dry. This piece of corrugated tin roofing was dumped locally, and I'm going to repurpose it and get it on the top of my coop and keep that water out. Well, the rain's thoroughly miserable today. It's about as much as I can cope with, I think. I'm going to put these two chicken feeders and chicken water, hang them off the beams, and then I'm done for the day. And the chicken coop is ready for the chicks to come back. There we go, the water and the feeder. Keeping these off the ground. We're hoping that might have some impact on making sure we don't have any rodents, and should be easy for the chickens. We'll see how they get on. By way of a quick update, anybody who would like to listen to my interview on Skywave radio, that's now available on iTunes, and I also believe it's available on Anchor. So why not pop along and have a look at it. It's called Digging the Dirt,
and Russ and Jake, who host the show, interviewed me for a reasonably long time, and it was good fun. And it's a great show, and there are a number of podcasts that are available of their show over the course of time, and it would make a very interesting listen if you're interested. iTunes and Anchor. I do hope you enjoyed the video today. If you did, click the subscribe button, click the like button, and if you want updates from me each time I upload a video, click the bell and select all. I do hope you have a great day. Diolch yn fawr.